Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, coming at you live on the YouTube channel, presented by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. Brant, we had a fun weekend this weekend. We had all-day football yesterday, starting in London, with my Falcons getting tossed by the Jacksonville Jaguars via animation in Andy's room. And then we had a full slate of games. We had some injuries. We had some stuff happen. Some good games, couple overtime games in that early slate. It was a good day of football, Brant.
It's a very good day of football. I saw a meme earlier today, and I figured you'd get a little laugh out of it. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's the one where the Atlanta Falcons fans sending Desmond Ridder back to the U.S. from London. It's him strapped to the rocket ship from Sid there as Toy Story, and he's getting ready to light it. I go, oh, man, he might actually get a kick out of this one, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to send it to you.
Listen, I will say this. Ridder had moments of looking very competent, and then there were some other moments that it was just like, my goodness, how is this guy an NFL quarterback? The back shoulder throw to Drake for the only offensive touchdown of the game was a sweet pass. And then he made some other really good passes to Jacksonville Jaguars defenders. So it was one of those games. We're still 2-2 after the break. We're going to move in next week to the Houston Texans and go get torched by CJ Stroud. So
yeah, I don't want to talk too much junk about your quarterback or your team. I still have mine to go. Let's go, Kenneth Walker. I only need like 48 fantasy points from you tonight because Isaiah Pacheco decides to have a career day.
38.5.
Oh, you did the math for me?
I didn't have to do the math. Somebody else did the math and told me about the math between your matchup. So
I feel like he's wrong, but I'll take it's Kling, so he probably is wrong anyways.
It was not. It was somebody else. But nonetheless, I digress. We've got a good football game tonight to watch, Brant. After this recording's over, I know you're going to be tuning into it probably as this recording's going on. It'll be interesting to see how quickly your Seahawks can jump out and just demolish these New York football giants. But we have a very special episode today, Brant. We've had 4 weeks of the season all but complete, basically, with the conclusion of tonight's game. It's time to start buying and selling and doing some moving and shaking on these dynasty rosters, Brant, because stagnancy kills, and we want to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's some guys out there that buying and selling can help you dynasty wise, can help you this year wise. Most of the guys that I'm going to talk about buying and selling are going to help you out if you're in the winning mode this year and you're not trying to, tank for old Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. So definitely that time of year to start really debating on that. Where am I at dynasty wise, and also in redraft? Like, is this a team I need to continuously pay attention to, or am I just messed up and not making it anymore?
Absolutely. You got to constantly evaluate. Sometimes you got to evaluate what you're saying, Brant.
Yeah.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into this. All right, Brant. So first and foremost, when we get into these buy and sells, sometimes I think it's important to know that in a dynasty league, sometimes you have to get out on a player a little early while the value is still high. I've been on the wrong end of that a couple of times. Last year I sold off both Alvin Kamara and Cam Akers, or excuse me, Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler. What an insult to Eckler that I just called him Cam Akers. But I felt like I was at that spot where I had to get rid of some of that age before it was too late, and the value didn't get back up high enough. So sometimes when you're like, why would I sell that guy? He's in the middle of his prime. He's killing it. Sometimes because in a dynasty league, these guys fall off a cliff at a certain age. What do we say, Brant? Like 31 to 32 for a wide receiver and about 28 for a running back.
Yep.
So those are the kind of the places where we kind of like to start selling off some of these guys. Now, Brant, first I want to ask you, are we starting with our buys or are we starting with our sells? Because I want to play a game here with you a little bit as I go through mine, but I want to know which one I want to start with.
Let's start with the buys, and let's start out with the buys, and I'm gonna shock a few people with my two buys here, I think.
Okay, so my first buy, Brant, is a guy that is currently running back 7 in PPR formats. He's averaging 15 points per game right now, and he's averaging only just slightly above 50% of a snap share. He is getting consistent pass work for a guy that's not expected to get pass work. And I will say that the hype on this guy all offseason was not existent. It was on his running back mate that was extremely high, Brant. So my first buy that I have for you is Brian Robinson Jr. of the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders, in my mind, I know you and I have sat down and talked about win-losses before. This team's playing a lot better than I expected. I think a big part of that has to do with Sam Howell. Another big part of it has to do with how effective that run game is with Brian Robinson. I know on the live start sit, you and I were both kind of on the fence about Brian Robinson Jr. this week due to the fact that he played the Philadelphia Eagles' stout run defense, but he did manage to find the end zone. He had a pretty productive game, Brant. And what I'd really like to know here is I'm interested. Would you rather own Brian Robinson Jr., Brant, or a package deal of Alexander Mattison and a late 2024 third-round draft pick?
I'm taking Brian Robinson, and you'll hear why here shortly.
Okay. So, again, this is a guy that right now is exploding. People are still – if you're in a super laxed league where guys are like they pay attention, they set their lineup, they sometimes respond to trade offers but don't necessarily always pay attention. Brian Robinson's a guy who's probably sitting on the bench at whoever owns him because they're like, oh, he's a gross running back for the Washington Commanders, and his name's not Antonio Gibson. Well, this guy's the guy to own in Washington right now. And again, that 50% snap share does kind of scare me a little bit, but he actually out-targeted Antonio Gibson this week. So in a game where it was close all game. So I think that speaks volumes. Brian Robinson's a guy I'm looking to acquire anywhere and everywhere I can, Brant.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely a guy. His rushing total was down this week, so it's definitely a good chance to get on there. He did have some good receiving work, and as you mentioned, he did find the end zone. Had he not found the end zone, I think you may be able to try to probably get him a lot cheaper. But even with that, this is a guy that I'm definitely moving forward to. Antonio Gibson just hasn't looked good. I watched a little bit of that game, and Gibson just hasn't looked all that great. So I think it's Brian Robinson's backfield, and I think his snap count will go up as weeks go on. Speaking of snap count go up, I'm going to talk about Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. That was his first week back from injuries. Yes, he got hurt week 1, so he only played, I think it was 47% of snaps. So he missed, most of week 1. He missed week 2, week 3. Came back this past week in week 4. He was on a snap count. Played 35% of the snap. Right now, it's the best chance to get a buy low on this guy. He's been a top 12 back the last 2 or 3 years. He's in dynasty too. If you're playing to win, this is a guy that you absolutely could probably buy real low on right now because a lot of people are going, oh, his age, oh, he's injury concern, oh, AJ Dillon's still there. AJ Dillon was nothing impressive while Jones was out. Jones is the guy in Green Bay. They're going to have to get that running back game going if they're going to compete in these games. We saw this week with nothing being able to really get going against the Lions that they just it was ugly to watch. And Jones is that guy. He was, like I said, he was on the snap count this week. He only played 35% of the snap. Aaron Jones is the guy that I'm going out and I'm trying to buy. I'm trying to sell off some of my bench depth for him. Maybe Antonio Gibson, just name-wise and age-wise, maybe throw a late second or late third, could probably go get you Aaron Jones if you were competing this year. Some of your later bench depth really could probably go out and get Aaron Jones, and you just got to think about it that you're giving up that depth in order to acquire a starting piece.
Okay. Yeah, I as somebody who watched a few Packers games this year more than I'd care to, just due to the fact that the Falcons have played them, Brant. I think it's really interesting just how stagnant that offense looks without Jones and without Christian Watson. And I'm one of the biggest Christian Watson truthers there is, but that team did look a lot better with those guys on the field, Brant. And two, just to further put the point there, you're talking the same value wise according to some of the tools that exist out there. Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones, and Terry McLaurin and Aaron Jones are all pretty close in value there. And yeah, when you talk about a guy that could be a great player down the stretch for a team and somebody maybe they're selling because their record's not been great because he's not been on the field. Maybe they're selling because they don't buy into it anymore. But yeah, Brant, I think that's a damn good piece to go try and add.
Absolutely.
My next one here is one that, as I started looking into this player, Brant, I was like, I didn't realize it was that good. And maybe I need to start sending some offers out to try to field this guy because it's impressive. And I think, again, like similarly with Brian Robinson on a bad team, this is another guy who's on a woefully bad team. And it should only get better for this player, Brant. I've got Marquise Hollywood Brown. He's the 17th overall wide receiver in PPR formats right now. He's averaging 14.1 points per game. Again, in PPR scoring, Brant. He's going to get an upgrade at some point in Kyler Murray. And even if he doesn't, if Kyler Murray doesn't end up coming back and playing for the Arizona Cardinals, this is a team that's going to play from behind quite a bit, right? This is a team that Joshua Dobbs is coming out and looking electric. And Marquise Hollywood Brown, Brant, is a guy that I think I'm going to start sending some offers for probably as soon as we get off of this recording here. So let me ask you first, Brant, if you were a rebuilding team, would you rather have Marquise Hollywood Brown or a 2024 mid-second round pick?
Rebuilding, I think I'm going to take the pick. Just because I know this draft class has a lot of good talent in it. So I think I'm going to take the pick if I'm rebuilding.
Okay. And then my other part of it is Marquise Hollywood Brown, Brant, or Najee Harris.
Man, I really want to say, excuse me, I really want to say Najee, but I think I got to go with Brown here. Najee was really on the cusp of one of my sells this week. I own him in too many leagues and I couldn't convince myself to sell him yet.
Hey, that's understandable. But yes, Marquise Brown shockingly having a quiet, sneaky good season, Brant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my next guy here, I'm going to talk about, he's actually some of the tools that you can look up. His value is really right there around Najee Harris, Damian Pierce, Chris Godwin, Anthony Richardson, and Jahan Dotson. And that's Anthony Richardson, I believe, in a 2 QB league. I'd have to go back up. And Calvin Ridley. That's Derrick Henry. This is a guy, 29 years old. You and me talked about it last week. What in the world happened? Well, what in the world happened is they got the butthole stomped in them 2 weeks ago. And then this past week, they realized, let's feed the beast. Let's get him on the field for over 50% of the snaps, and let's win some games. He's seen over 20 carries in almost every single game. Or two of the 4 games. Sorry, I was looking at last year's. I gotta click the other button here. He's two of the 4 games. He's seen over 20 carries. When he sees over the 20 carries, he's going 80 yards, and he's finding the end zone, and the team is competing. So give me Derrick Henry to go buy low on. I'm not giving up a whole lot for him. I'm not going out and giving up first, second round draft picks probably for him. Maybe a late second. I don't think I'm willing to give up a first. Mid to late second. Honestly, going into this year, if I'm trying to win, I'm going after Henry and I'm shipping Najee in it. I'm shipping I'm definitely shipping Dameon Pierce, but you and me both don't believe in that hype train. So really going there, I like Henry moving forward. I think the Titans realized, oh, we really do have to use this man in order to win games. So he's going to get used. And we all know what Derrick Henry does down the stretch. We've seen it year after year after year. Most of us have faced it year after year after year going into the fantasy playoffs. So absolutely give me Derrick Henry on a buy low.
Yeah, Derrick Henry is coming off of a really good week. I think your buy low would have been last week. You're buying a little higher this week. Maybe if he dips again this coming week, it's a little bit more of a buy low, but he did have a touchdown pass as well this week, which, he's always coming in there, getting them fantasy points, doing his thing. And he's still got to play the Texans again at some point. So those are always good weeks too. You want to have him in your lineup before there. Real quick, let's buy the guy that's on TV right now. How about Jamal Adams for over 25 tackles tonight, Brant? All right, moving on.
I'm not allowed to say the words on this cast that I would like to say.
Let's get into these sells here, Brant. So my first one, you know what? I'm going to save my heated one for just a minute, Brant, because my second one's going to be one that's very non-surprising to you. But my first one is a guy that I'm looking to sell. He's currently running back 20 on the season, averaging 11.5 points per game. This is a running back whose offense is doing anything but what we expected them to do, Brant. I think this guy's fantasy value is only relative to the quarterback being banged up right now. I think the bottom falls out in this player at some point during the season. That's Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, Brant. At some point, this offense is going to make up for lost time. They're going to hyper-target T. Higgins when he returns from his rib injury. They're going to hyper-target Jamar Chase, especially after he comes out and says he's always blanking open. That man is about to be force-fed the ball. They are coming up on a bye week where maybe you let Joe Burrow, sit and get healthy. But again, I'm just not sold on Joe Mixon this year. He's getting a lot of touches again right now, just due to the simple fact that Joe Burrow doesn't have time to stand in the pocket. He can't go under center right now because his calf muscle is so banged up. And at some point, I think this offense is going to revert back to more passing. And I think you're going to see more Samaje P. Ryan when that happens. And the bigger problem is, or not the bigger problem, the one beneficiary you have going for you is it's Joe Mixon. There's name value attached to this player. So I think you could still get a decent penny for him, Brant. So let me see if I can entice you here. If you're the Joe Mixon owner, tell me if you do either of these offers in the Dynasty League. I'm going to start you off with the lower one that I expect to get shot down, but we'll see how you feel about it. First one is Zach Charbonnet straight up for Joe Mixon, Brant. How do you feel about that one in a Dynasty League?
I own Zach Charbonnet. No, can't trade me my own player. No, I'm turning that down. I am turning that down because of a reason I will discuss here shortly too, that I pivoted a little bit on you and I did not tell you because I didn't want you to bag on me until we got on air. So no, I'm not taking that one.
Okay, and then the second one I have for you is the guy who's coming off of a suspension 2 games early, Jamison Williams, and a late second-round draft pick for Joe Mixon.
That would really entice me if I was not in running back need and I knew that I could be okay without having him. That could really, really entice me. I do like JMO coming out. Oh, excuse me. One of the reasons that in our league I wouldn't do it is I am an Amaron St. Brown owner. So if you are a St. Brown owner, I don't know if I'm going with holding on to 2 of those Lions, but that one would definitely entice me. And I would really, really highly consider that one if I wasn't, like I said, a St. Brown owner and I could live without Mixon in my running back or I needed some wide receiver help.
Okay.
Just want to put this out here. Jamal Adams with his first tackle in Lord knows how long.
worth every penny.
Yeah, worth every penny. 1 tackle and he stubbed his pinky toe. So my first sell here, and this is going to be a little controversial. It's the man that's on TV. He hasn't got to touch the ball yet, and that's Kenneth Walker. Over the last 3 weeks, his snaps have decreased. Charbonnet is really starting to take over the pass catching role. Yes, I know Walker had a great, outstanding catch last week, and he had some great. Oh, Lord, Adams is down. Adams is down. Medical staff's on the field. What a surprise. Sorry. Now, but Kenneth Walker is is a guy that I'm actually selling on in all. I really think this backfield is going to wind up being a 50-50 split. I think that it's going to be really, really tough for Kenneth Walker to hold on to this. He does hold on to the backfield as long as he stays healthy, but the minute that he maybe gets a little banged up and Charbonnet gets a chance to show what he can really do, I think it's really going to turn into a 50-50 split. Charbonnet has already been a little more efficient on the ground than Kenneth Walker has. I just think the only reason that Walker is seeing the majority is just like last year, getting Kenneth Walker involved. It took 5-6 weeks before he really got involved. And I think that's really what Seattle's trying to do now. It's just that they're just slowly working Charbonnet in. And I think coming up very shortly, you're going to see a very closer split.
Okay, so even with that closer split, you wouldn't be enticed to get rid of Joe Mixon, huh?
No, not for Charbonnet, not when I really think it's going to be a 50-50.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Brent, here's my last sell for you that I have. This is one that's going, I apologize now if I come off a little heated, if I come off a little bit passionate about this, because this is just a player I cannot stand, Brent. So I'm selling DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears at this point, which first of all, let me be clear and say I don't own him anywhere. Okay. So this is not my problem necessarily, but for those of you that do own him, all right. DJ Moore is currently wide receiver 14. And I know that's like, hey, it feels all right. This is all in garbage time. This man is coming in. This whole game this weekend was garbage between the Broncos and the Bears, first of all. So I'm not reading a whole lot into it. The Bears just go put up points on a defense that gave up 70 the week prior. So again, not reading a whole lot into that. Sorry, Broncos fans, if you're out there listening. But DJ Moore's work is predominantly coming in garbage time. I still don't believe in Justin Fields, even though he came out and had a huge outing this week. I'm just not a believer in what he brings to the table. And even if I did have a semblance of a belief in Justin Fields, his favorite target's still Cole Kmet in my eyes. Cole Kmet's the only consistent thing in that Chicago Bears offense. So for those reasons and more, I'm out on DJ Moore. Now, here's the interesting part, Brant. He is coming off of a big game this week, and the week before he had a pretty decent game as well. So this is a sell high candidate in my mind. Now here's the two I have for you, Brant, and I'm coming at you from two different ways here. So if you're a non-contender and you own DJ Moore, are you taking a 2024 late first round draft pick for him?
Yeah, I am. Go ahead and give me your next one, and I'll explain why I'm really starting to. I drank that Kool-Aid once. I'm not taking it again. And I'll explain why here in just a second.
Here, this second half of this one, Brant, is I think I'm really coming at you in your sweet spot, because this is a guy you were all over this offseason. This is a guy you said just after last week you'd never say to sit him again. Would you rather have DJ Moore or James Conner and a 2024 third-round draft pick?
If I'm competing, I'm taking James Conner. If I'm rebuilding, I think I'm going to try to go after the first. I think I'm going to just take Conner out of it, because I don't know what Arizona is going to look like next year with what could be a huge turnover. So I think I'm going to fade off of taking Conner, and I really think I want to go after the first, or even try to get a second in James Conner if I'm in a rebuild.
Okay.
So I drank that Kool-Aid all off season. Anyone that listens to us knows I drank that Bears Kool-Aid. I was all in on Fields. I was all in on Moore. I went and stacked him in our dynasty league. And Fields right here is some of the notes that I had down for my sells. But I was like, man, I can't really I hate talking about quarterbacks and selling them, because a lot of people are still in single quarterback leagues. That's why I pivoted over to Walker. Fields is a guy that I'm getting off of everywhere, because I don't know if he's the starter next year. Great, you could tear up the Broncos defense, but you can't tear up anything else. You just can't. So, but I'm going to get into my other sell, and that's Alexander Mattison. I know you and me talked about this, and you really did think he was going to come out and ball out, which he did. Last 2 weeks have been great weeks for him, seeing 80 and then 69% of snaps. Cam Akers is starting to get worked into it. I think as he gets more comfortable with the offense, I think it becomes more of a 50-50 split. And I just don't know if you're still going to get that. Right now might be the only time to really sell Madison as high as you're going to. In my mind, I think Madison could finish as an RB2, maybe RB3, top tier RB3, top low tier RB2 the rest of the season. So I think I'm going to try to go get something that I'm a little more comfortable with when selling him. Such as a James Conner. Honestly, we saw what he could do. We've seen when he's part of this offense. I'm definitely comfortable with him. But yeah, Madison scares me with. No, I'll get back to that in a minute. Madison scares me with Cam Akers coming on. We saw Akers playing this week. It's just a backfield that I'm scared of, and I'm kind of staying away from as of right now.
Okay. I will say on that one, Brant, I would much rather have Alexander Madison than James Conner personally, just because I do think, obviously the run game is going to have pretty wide open lanes in Minnesota due to the simple fact that the pass game is such a perpetual thing that has to be focused on there in Minnesota, Brant.
Knees never down. 73-yard touchdown. Knee never hit the ground. All right. So yeah, absolutely. I knew you would be a little off of that one. Sorry guys. I need Walker to blow up huge tonight in order for me to compete in our dynasty league. So this hopefully, oh man, different angle shows different. So hopefully he does this. But yeah, I knew you'd be off of that one a little bit on me. So I knew I had to get some controversial out of here. James Conner, after what he's done and how many times he's touching the ball, that's a guy that I really wish I would have gotten more stake in. I did talk about him being a late round flyer that I really liked. I wish I would have not waited so late to grab him in some of my drafts. Let's talk about, we had some waiver pickups for this week. Let's talk about yours first, and then I'll get into mine because I really want to see what the outcome of this is. And I know I won't be paying too much attention.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna start with a running back in that putrid game that I was forced to watch at my in-laws' house on Sunday, Brant, the Denver Broncos and the Chicago Bears. And there for the longest time, there was one player on the Denver offense that I thought was electric, that looked like he had any kind of a spark. And it was not Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, I think, is a shell of his former self coming back from that injury. I'm just not buying into Javonte Williams. He didn't look like he had any explosion, any cut. And then it later came out that he was dealing with some kind of a nagging injury issue. So, I'm out, but I do think I'm starting to buy into the Jaleel McLaughlin hype train a little bit. Undrafted guy there on Denver. And he was legitimately an Energizer bunny when he came in. He touched the ball. He looked really good, Brant. He had 7 rushes for 72 yards, and he caught all 3 of his targets for 32 yards and a touchdown as well. He finished his RB10 on the week, granted that your boy Kenneth Walker doesn't go off and bump him out of that. And he had a 33% snap share. So I understand it's limited right now, but this is very similar to what we're seeing in Pittsburgh with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's a little more explosive than Najee is right now, so he's starting to get some touches. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Jaleel McLaughlin. I do have waiver claims put in for him in every league that I'm in that he's available, Brant.
Yeah, I definitely will be too. I think Williams will be missing some time with that injury. Samaje Perine just hasn't gotten what looks like really control over that backfield. I thought he would. I think I'll be out looking to add him in some waivers too, because I really do think that Williams' injury is going to be a little more severe than what we think. So my guy is a guy that I went out and I added after the waivers cleared last week, and this was a guy that I saw something come across my phone. I went and I looked at him, and he looked really explosive in the preseason. He went to the IR, and maybe there was a little lining, little light bulb underneath that nobody saw there in the Ravens backfield after Dobbins went down, and that is Keaton Mitchell. There in the backfield, running back for the Baltimore Ravens. As of right now, he's on the IR. So a lot of people, this guy you could snag. Dynasty is really where it's at. The man's 21 years old. He's an undrafted rookie. He looked really explosive in the preseason. He went to the IR. That touchdown got called back. He looked really really explosive in the preseason. He did go straight to the IR on with a shoulder injury, but it was nothing serious. I think it was more of, well, he's only going to be our RB3, RB4, so we might as well put him on the IR so we can open up some roster room. Well, now he's coming and he's competing with shell themselves. What is that? Melvin Gordon there, Justice Hill, who's been hurt, Gus Edwards, who is a great spillback, but I don't think he's really cut to be the workhorse. And this is a guy that really could come in and make some explosive plays. And we've all seen the injury history there in Baltimore. So this is a guy that could easily rise up the depth chart really quick. And I'm sorry, you can probably get him after waivers clear. And he could end up being a steal of the draft, especially if he looks as explosive after his return as he did in the preseason.
Yeah, I'm still, Brant, just to talk about it real quick here, not to rub salt in an open wound. I don't see any part of his body hitting the turf. I didn't see it there.
I don't either. That was my fantasy win right there.
Looks like your boy Jamal Adams is pretty fired up on the sideline too. But anyway, so we'll move into this Thursday night game quick, Brant, and get you out of here, because I think this Thursday night game is going to be one of those games that you'd wish you were doing something other than
I will be
watching football. We've got the Bears, who haven't won a football game since last October, against the Washington Commanders, who look a lot better, but it's still not the sexiest of opposing teams, Brant. We've got the Commanders favored by a touchdown at home and a 44.5 point spread on this game. How do you feel about this Thursday night?
It's gross. There's nothing really that entices me. I think Brian Robinson comes out. I think he balls out, which I think is why this might be the last chance to buy him is right now. I think Terry McLaurin has a great game because I don't know if Dotson will play on a short week. I look for, Sam Howell to really solidify himself as that quarterback there. And I look for Justin Fields to go back to the way he was in under 20 points fantasy. Just right now, he's sitting on the cusp of fantasy QB 12, which, I mean, great, but a lot of people were drafting you to be a QB top 4. And I think he goes back to under 15. I don't see it. Washington's front line will get after him. And maybe he gets into the top 10 QBs this week if he runs away from them, because that might be the only chance he has, because that Bears offensive line is atrocious. I'm sorry, but I think your front office needs to do some deeper research, because the offensive lineman, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but when we got back from the draft, I looked into him. He already had back issues, and I believe that's what he's out for again. Why would you draft a guy that already had issues with his back going into the combine? The Bears front office is just making this team look even worse. And I'm sorry, I drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm sorry I tried to pour you guys a couple glasses, and I apologize for that. I led you in a bad direction this year. Hopefully I can help you out with it after next year. Don't follow my Chargers advice, and apparently don't follow any Bears advice I may give you. Roshan Johnson.
So Khalil Herbert. Yeah, I was guilty too, Brand. I expected to see Fields take a step forward, but I think most of America did. You didn't force anybody to draft Justin Fields who didn't already have some preconceived notion that they wanted him. He was fantasy gold last year, and there's still a chance he gets back to fantasy gold without being a relatively good quarterback in the NFL. If we seeing him scramble out of the pocket a little bit more, hey, it'll be what it is. So, but yeah, I think you're right, Brent. I think Cole Kmet's a guy who doesn't come out of my lineup at the tight end position after this week. I'm not saying he's going to do what he did this week every week, but I think he's a safe play at tight end. Brian Robinson, as you mentioned, and again, this is a tough defense in Washington. They got a nasty front seven. So I'm lowering expectations on Fields, DJ Moore, pretty much just about everything on the Chicago side of it. And I do think the Bears start the season 0-5, Brand. I'm not looking for them to get their first win this week.
Yeah, I do know it's looking good for me, and a little friendly wager I have with a friend of an acquaintance. I don't know if we want to call him a friend. With the Bears going under 6.5 wins, it's looking pretty good for me. But what are you starting anything on the Bears side of the football fantasy wise out of your flex, because we don't flex Thursday night?
Cole Kmet. That's about it for me, Brent. Just again, the tight end position's been so wishy-washy this year. I got cute in one of my leagues that I own Cole Kmet, and I sat him this week in favor of Dalton Kincaid.
I'm so
That
glad I
won't
did
happen
it.
again. That won't happen again. Cole Kmet probably doesn't come out of my lineup just because Justin Fields has been looking his way pretty regularly. But yeah, that's pretty well it. I mean, obviously, if you have DJ Moore, you probably can't sit him, but yeah, I don't love anything here, Brent.
I am glad that the league I do own DJ Moore in is our 800,000 round draft league. So I'm able to sit him. It may not be the prettiest person I'm sitting him for, but I feel very comfortable with sitting him. As for the Bears side of the ball, Cole Kmet's the only thing I feel comfortable with. As for Washington side of the ball, I think I like their defense. I think I like Brian Robinson. Why did you change the color to blue? You're so mean to me.
The green wasn't working, so I put the blue on for you. It's not for the Giants. It's the green and blue of the Seahawks.
Oh, okay.
Just to be
I
fair.
think I'm starting everything on Washington side of the ball, but as for the Bears, Cole Kmet's the only thing. Cole Kmet might be the only thing I feel comfortable starting with moving forward on that offense altogether. Khalil Herbert's starting to scare me a little bit, and I think if they fall any further behind, I think they're just going to hand the ball to Roschon Johnson and say, hey, let's see what we could do with you.
Yeah, it's getting to the point, Brent, where you're only a few wins away from starting to do some player evaluations for next season. So, yeah, it's definitely getting ugly in Chicago. Hopefully, they can get something figured out for those of us that do have fantasy investments there in town.
Absolutely. I think that wraps it up, guys. As always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.